see what the current ladies have to say about their own personal journeys and the struggles that they encounter. Welcome, ladies. Glad to have you here with us today. Current ladies and our current Kelsey Smith, who is filling in for Kristen while Kristen's out of town. Glad that you're here with us today. And I really want to start with you today because you have a cool story about your almost not newlywed husband. You all have been married almost a year now. What's your story?
My story and how it relates today, and how I want to challenge the viewers, the dating viewers, is that if you're dating someone seriously, you should have the conversation about pornography, because you need to know as a woman if that's a struggle for them. You need to know if they've conquered it, if they're currently struggling with it, and if they have had a lot of that temptation. And so I asked my husband before if I could say this, but I asked him, during our courting season, and by the grace of God, he did not and has never struggled with it, which I'm so thankful for. But it doesn't mean that I don't continually pray for him, that I don't continually pray for the other men in my life, because that's, as women, we think, what can we do about it? Well, we can ask them, and then we can also pray for them and be prayer warriors, because we know it is, like you said,
every man's battle.
Every man's battle.
Right, it is.
Well, and it's I have to tell you, I'm a mother of a teenager now. And, for me, I'm constantly thinking of it, because I told my son this the other day. I said, son, you're going to have to respect women when they're not respecting themselves. And it's a hard lesson that you have to teach now, because, it's what comes in the mail. It's the little catalogs, and I'm trying to keep them, because I'm trying to help protect, but it's the little things that pop up on your computers. And I have so many friends that their kids at 12 and 13 years old are already addicted to it. And they're in the middle of going, so it is a very real thing that our boys, not just men, but our boys are going through, and we need to be talking about this, and we need to figure out ways that we can help as parents to start protecting our children and our husbands.
Yeah, well, you're all mothers of sons.
Yeah.
How do you deal with it? How have you broached the subject with your kids?
Well, in our home, we're communicators. I think obviously there's an age-appropriate time to communicate certain things with your children, but with our son, boys by nature are very inquisitive, and so our son's going to ask questions, and I thank God for covering him and keeping him from a lot of things, but we communicate. You know what, that's not an appropriate way to present yourself, but we all know that even during family-friendly hours now, you really can't have your child just sit down and leave the room. We have to censor everything that's coming his way. So we communicate about it. What's an appropriate way? What's it, even with our children, everybody always asks, well, what's the appropriate time for if you have a boy and a girl, for them not to bathe with one another? And so you just have to guard their hearts, their eyes, their ears, and mind, give them the word, tell them, teach them how to respect others. And I think a lot of it, they look at their mother and father and how they interact and how they treat one another and honor one another. But I think open dialogue is key. And then obviously devices, we talk about that a lot. Make sure we have kids YouTube, and you're protecting your children's eyes.
No. My son just turned 13, and to be honest with you, I really haven't talked to him about this subject per se, but we do limit, his phone is not allowed in his room. He knows that I go on his phone and check where he's been, that sort of thing. But I really, this certain topic hasn't come up yet. It will, I'm sure. But I do think the parents and the example we set, we don't watch a lot of TV in our house in general, mostly sports. And, we don't get catalogs to the house that have, I don't know, we just have never been into that sort of Victoria's Secret, so really we haven't had to deal with it that much, but I know it's coming.
It is
So
coming.
let me have some advice.
Well, we haven't had specifically that conversation either, I guess, but we talk about everything.
Yeah.
And so when I became concerned or felt that there was a need for the conversation, I kind of went to my husband and said, do you feel comfortable having this conversation with the boys? Because I didn't want them to feel uncomfortable with having that conversation with me. So I asked my husband to have the conversation. But we talk about all kinds of things when we're together, and we don't have magazines in our house either. But I will say this. We took Alan to college in Miami in August. And I am sitting waiting on him to finish up orientation. And they were having something, I think they called it Rush, is what they were calling it, with the sorority girls, girls that were trying to get into sororities. Well, South Florida is full of these really cute little bitty Hispanic girls.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Well, they had on the smallest dresses I've ever seen in my life. And I sat there and I got so overwhelmed and so nervous. And I called my husband and I said, okay, you're going to have a conversation because I can't. I don't even know where to start with this. And so I depend a lot on my husband to have certain conversations because he and I have had those conversations and I know that he has what they need in order to grow and to mature and to not fall into.
Well, guess what conversation you get to have with your daughter's prospective husband. You know, seriously, when our two daughters were getting ready to get married, the guy had already asked for the hand in marriage, and we had a list of questions that we were going to ask that young man. And I'm not sure that we did it with Kyle because you had already had that discussion with him. But everything that I read from them, some of these wonderful Christian male writers say that there are about 4 or 5 really important questions you need to ask the guy who comes and asks for your daughter's hand in marriage. Are you involved in pornography at all is one of them. And man, I mean, it takes courage. It took courage for me to even want to do a program like this. I don't want to have to talk about it, Deborah. I'm like you. I don't want to have to discuss it. I don't want it to be in our home. I don't want... But we have to have the courage to do that.
Because it's destroying men and it's destroying marriages. And we were just talking about, I think it's one of the number one things. We live so blinded, but it's very real. And it's funny because my husband's doing 2 books, and I can't remember. It's like Clueless Boys, Aggressive Girls. And he is taking, and I'm so thankful, men who are out there, please get involved with your children and with your sons. I thank God every day that I have a husband who lives it.
Me too.
You know, one of the things that I made a list of 80 things that I was looking for in a mate, and one, I know, that's a whole other conversation. But anyways, but one of the things that I had on there is I wanted somebody who did not stare at other women. I just didn't like even that glance, or that I wanted somebody that when he was with me, he honored me and he honored his God. And I think that there's just little things that we can teach our boys. We were talking about today, her and I, it was such a sweet conversation because, you know, girls post. I mean, I'm like, who are these parents that let your kids take pictures of themselves in bathing suits and post it? And then Christian boys are liking it. I'm like, don't like that. You need to stand up and tell that girl in a Jesus-loving way, say, I love you, you're beautiful, but I don't need to see you naked, half naked yet. I mean, there's just little things I think as Christians and as moral people that we need to stand up and start saying, that may be not the best thing for you. And I feel like it's time for us to start making that stand, going, you're beautiful.
Well, you can challenge the guys who come to your house to pick up your daughter, to be able to have them be challenged to treat your daughter with respect, to tell that young man she's a daughter of a king. She is in a line of royalty, and she deserves to be treated like that. And if we're not communicating that, first of all, to make that daughter believe that, and then secondly, for the guy that comes to the door, then we're missing the boat as parents because that's our job.
Now, I have done that because I have one daughter. One daughter. And everybody knows that she is my heart, that I love her dearly. And I refuse to allow some guy to come in, and well, she refuses, I should say. Because you've met my daughter. Her confidence is through the roof.
That's good.
But she knows that she's a princess and that she deserves to be treated a certain way. To the point where I say a lot of times, this is my princess. And so when she's dating someone, they come in knowing that in this family, this is how you treat women, because we won't tolerate anything less. So, I haven't talked to my boys, but I will talk to the boyfriends.
Yeah, because they're going to date our girls. So that's why I tell people, I'm raising your future wives and husbands. You're raising the future. We have to work together as a community to raise each other up, to be people who,
And you know what else I used to tell and I do tell my boys this. When you're dating a girl, if that girl is not going to be your wife, she's going to be somebody's wife.
Come on.
And do you want to treat somebody else's wife this way? Would you want somebody to treat your wife that way? And so it's important to me that they understand how important it is to respect all women, because if this is not going to be your life, what are you handing over to this next
And
person.
that's what pornography does. It perverts. You know,
It does.
The devil's an imitator. He can't duplicate what
anything,
God does,
right.
but he can try to water down and he can try to demean what God really has for
Right.
you. And I read this study by Dr. Archibald Hart, and he interviewed over 600 Christian men, and only 6% of them said that they were truly delivered from the effects of pornography. So that told me this is a major stronghold, and how he addressed how it can be treated. It needs to be treated like an addiction, whether it was alcohol or drugs or whatever it is. But the first thing, and no pun intended at all, but they said exposure brings closure. You have to tell someone what's done in secret. And there was a young man that had a powerful testimony in college, football player, got exposed to pornography through one of his teammates. And he was starting to struggle with it and go home to his parents' house and watch pornography. But he was a Christian. He was dating a Christian girl, and it was tormenting him. It was literally eating him alive. And he ended up telling some of his friends, and they looked at him like, man, that's not a big deal. That's no big deal. And so a whole year went by where he's still struggling. He finally, his roommate actually caught him in the act of doing something while watching porn, and he was so ashamed that he finally had to tell his roommate. Well, thank God his roommate was a Christian, young Christian man, and said, you need to get help. You need to tell your pastor and your girlfriend. And so it's a process. It's exposing it, it's admitting it, and you have to replace that addiction with something else and get the right kind of help.
But I'm glad you're bringing it up, because there's women out here today that are watching this who their husband and their husbands make them get involved with watching it. And they need to know today that this is their reckoning moment, that they can recognize that it's wrong, that they are worthy to be treated like queens and princesses of Christ, that this is not them, this is nothing wrong with them, this is something with their husband, and that they need to hear our words today, that they need to be set free.
And our leadership, our church leadership, needs to be talking about this to us too.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure Bishop Wiggins has done this, but if they're not, a lot of the research that I've read says that it's because they're involved in it. And how are you going to, if you're the pastor of a church and you're involved in pornography yourself and in perverted thinking and activities, how are you going to preach that message? They don't want to be hypocritical, but they're, it's just a painful thing. So I think our leadership needs to step up. I think that we as women not only need to pray, but we need to be talking about it with our men, with the boyfriends, with their sons. So, it's tough. It's tough.
And I love what you said about, that roommate. He was, in a way holding, that young man accountable. I think that's what our men need. Our men need other men surrounding them to challenge them, to hold them accountable, and then most importantly, to make sure that they're having a repentant heart. Because at the end of the day, if there isn't a repentance of your heart, you're going to keep doing that. So I think that's one of the most important things.
And pornography is about self-gratification. When you are in the confines of a marriage, it's about giving. It's about the other person receiving the pleasure. It's not just about yourself. And that's what we have to expose, is that root and that seed of what pornography does to marriages and these false expectations. They want their wife or their spouse to live up to what a porn star does, and they've interviewed porn stars before that became Christians, and they're like, this is after 50 takes. This is not real. This is an illusion. And people are buying the lie, and it's destroying families.
It's the enemy.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing that we need to remember, and thank you, ladies, for being so transparent and willing to talk about this, because again, it is not an easy subject to talk about. But we have to understand that it is a perversion. First of all, to admit that it is wrong, and that it leads. Our research has led us to understand that it leads to other perverted types of things, like child pornography and like other things that we don't even like to talk about or mention here on the air. So know that if you are involved in something like that, or know somebody in your life who is, we're praying for you, and we're praying that you will have the courage to do something about it, because there is life victorious in and only through Jesus Christ.